Welcome back to the Drummer Mindset Podcast. I'm Joel Pereira. Today I'm releasing my episode with Nick Hope. Nick is the drummer for Empire Strikes Brass, a brass ensemble you can see touring around the country. They're out of Asheville, North Carolina. And on Tuesdays, Nick, along with a couple of other players from Empire Strikes Brass, host the early funk jam at Asheville Music Hall One Stop. Super nice guy. You can tell he is connected with so many folks and shares a lot about the other musicians in town and shares a lot about his story and how he balances family and how he expresses his emotion through his drumming. I really enjoy getting to know Nick. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and follow. And I'll see you later. So you were just talking about your dad. He didn't play music, but he would play a lot of jazz records.
Yeah, he was basically just like multitasking all the entertainment. He'd read the newspaper, watch Star Trek with the sound off, and listen to jazz records. Then when the song was over, he would name the song whatever he thought that he felt the song was.
Right.
He loved renaming tunes.
And were these like oftentimes like instrumental tunes?
Yeah, and a lot of he let me think of some. A lot of Weather Report.
Oh wow.
A lot of like
so fusion stuff.
Yeah, like
right
late
on.
70s stuff. There was this other like I'm calling them like a Weather Report. Not a ripoff, but very similar. They're called Barabbas.
Okay.
There was like another all-white group playing the same stuff, but they kind of dressed up like barbarians, had this barbarian theme.
I think I've seen a shadow of that on the internet or something like that.
Yeah, you might have. They rip. It was cool.
Okay.
He also listened to like Bob James.
Okay.
Some Al Jarreau, stuff like that. He definitely had some Coltrane and some Miles and stuff.
Were you into it too, or was it just always there?
Well, because it was my dad when I was growing up, it became like dad's music. So
right. Yeah,
when
you have to rebel against that.
Yeah, when
right?
I first started playing drums, it was so this was just say 92, 93. The whole grunge thing was hitting, so
Sure.
Everybody had a rock band. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna play drums. Well, let me back up. So I actually first started off as a singer.
Okay.
So like 6th and 7th grade is when I started actually playing drums in the band, but I was also in the chorus.
Chorus at school?
Chorus at school.
Okay.
And then from chorus at school, I got selected to be an Episcopal boys choir, which was in High Point, which was a big thing.
Yeah.
I was actually the first black in the Episcopal boy choir. Singing like, Yesu, Joy of Man's Desiring, stuff like that.
Right.
So that was cool, and couldn't really tell if I was going to go drum way or if I was going to go singing way. And so when I got into high school and there's like talent shows, the first 2 years I was in this R&B singing group called BIH, Brothers in Harmony.
Okay.
And I sang the high parts. And so I don't know if you remember like Boys and Men and all
Sure,
those groups. All the dudes that sang the high parts would be like their first initial, then love. So my name was In Love. And I remember the second talent show we were doing this Shy tune. I can't remember the name of it, but it's their favorite tune. And there's a big high C that I was supposed to hit, and I got on my knees, and like I'll hit it every time. And at talent show, that's when my voice decided to crack. And, predominantly black high school, and black people do not play that, so they booed the hell out of me.
Okay.
So the next year, I'm like, okay, not doing R&B. I play drums. So I come in with like my rock band, and we're doing Heart Shaped Box by Nirvana. And again, like the black people are like, okay, we're done with you, bro. We don't know what's going on. You're playing this drum stuff. So
you're in the Episcopal boys band or chorus, and then you're like cracking on this Shy song, and then it's like now you just turn total like Pacific Northwest like.
Oh yeah, like I just left
grunge.
the culture, which was cool. I mean, in my mind. And I felt this the whole time, especially the early 90s, like a lot of that R&B was produced electronic drums, and I was getting more into drums, and it was hard to find, like, real drums in that type of music unless you were listening to, like, I don't know if you remember Chris Dave back in Mint Condition.
No,
like
I don't. I was not aware of Chris Dave and Mint Condition back in those days. He didn't come into my consciousness until, like, in the past decade or so.
16, 17, And they had songs on the radio, and it was live drums. And so I remember like researching, like, who was playing drums on this live? Like, oh, this is cool. And it's like, oh, Chris Daddy. He was already Chris Daddy Day for some reason at 16, 17 or so.
Okay.
That's when I started getting to him. And then, like, other than, jazz and rock, there was not much available for me for live drums. So, according my dad listened to jazz, so I went the rock way, started playing my rock bands. My senior year, we went in for the talent show, and we did Weezer, the Sweater Song, and now I'm singing and playing drums.
Wow, okay.
About Superman skivvies and stuff like that. And again, the black people booed me pretty well. But by that time, I was pretty much set straight. It's my senior year. I was really into marching band.
Okay.
I was a drum captain.
Okay. Snare, obviously, right?
Yes. Yeah. And that actually, I started playing in the marching band when I was in 8th grade because I have one older sister. She was real good looking, at least. She's definitely good looking now. But all the dudes liked her, and so they were like, yo, man, come and hang out with us. You know what I mean? I realized later on they were trying to get in with my sister, so they taught me all the cadences in 8th grade. So when I got to 9th grade, all my homies, I was like, yo, this is how it goes. And so it was already like, that kind of set me on a trajectory, thanks to my sister. Like, she got me a little year ahead, which actually, we'll get back to this. We were talking about Leaf Global.
Yeah.
I've been talking to them, and it's going to happen. We just haven't got the logistics yet. I've had this idea of starting a Asheville drum corps.
Oh, yeah?
Because I do like marching band. I'm way out of shape on it, but I just want to have something fun. Something that we could take into the schools and teach kids just like, just very basic stuff about percussion and rhythm, with marching band instruments. And then so Leaf Global is going to be, helping me fund this.
Nice.
I'm teaching classes there. And then the idea is to have like a youth drum corps that can go out and do their own thing, and then an adult drum corps.
Oh, yeah.
Where we can just have fun, do parades.
Right on.
So if you're down, like I'm looking for.
You know what? This might be my opportunity because like marching band was was always something that I like wished I had done, and it's something like looking back, I was like, I wish I had that to like solidify so much, but. I'll definitely look into it.
All the drummers at Asheville is open to everybody. I've hit anybody I know. Once we do get it started, there's so many drummers, so much as we're working. So if I can't get these people, then I can get these people. So I think it's going to really work and be super cool.
I think it's a great idea.
Leaf's going to help me throw some fundraisers to get the gear, so we can have some nice gear. Got to figure out a name. Yeah, and the marching band thing, it is really good because. Number one, you get some dexterity, definitely in your chops because you play loud for long periods of times. And I have seen a lot of times, especially when I got to college, I went to Appalachian State, which their snare line was, at that time, one of the best in the state. Like, these guys had just phenomenal chops. But, like, it rarely would translate to the drum set.
Right.
There's very few drummers. Chad's Sexton, played with 311, was a big marching band guy. I think he still writes and for like some of the big like DCI marching bands.
Yeah,
and he's one of the guys that really like kind of like combine the two things. You can hear it in his playing. The stuff he does is dope. I mean, I think 311 is dope mainly because of Chad Sexton.
Agreed. That was like one of the, like after I got into drums, that was the thing. Like I picked up on that and I was like, this is it.
Yeah. I think he's been underrated because he was in 311 for some reason. But especially like right in that time coming out of like,
the guitar, bass, and drums were always
Peanut.
good.
And like a lot of people get annoyed by their vocals.
It's
and
the
like,
vocals that don't land.
I wasn't annoyed. Like I'm a big reggae head. I love reggae.
Yeah.
And the term white reggae has never sat well with me.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it's thrown around a lot. And I get it. Reggae started in Jamaica was like,
sure.
a cultural thing, but the same thing about reggae is like, it's the essence, I guess, of Rastafari is like the whole one love thing. So like, I just take that literally and like, this is something for anybody who feels a struggle, you know what I mean? So,
right.
And so I dug it, I remember my dad buying me like my first Bob Marley shirt in 6th grade. I didn't have dreadlocks until maybe 9th grade, which was early. So I always like, had like that that reggae thing. And then like
Mm-hmm.
when I heard these guys mixing, I was like, man, this is super cool because like they're actually, and it happened. Like they actually brought it to our generation. Like you know, a lot of us already listen to like Bob Marley and Peter Tosh, and then like you know, it really started to like inundate the radio waves, and like
Right.
all these like reggae fusions, if you will, started to
Mm-hmm.
come through, and I really appreciated that.
Yeah,
So
I think we were on a similar path, at least in as far like not similar path, but there's some parallels going on because I was a big fan of ska, and it was the
nice,
same.
yeah,
It's the same source,
it is,
and so but then people would talk about the waves of ska coming through the states,
yeah,
and it was like always kind of judged. You know, it's like was it first wave or is it second wave?
yeah,
Don't talk about third wave. That's
Yeah.
cheesy shit.
yeah.
You know,
is that
like
what they,
that's
like real
like
big fish and
yeah, exactly. That's like just that's like singing in these. What you need to get into is soul reggae, which
yeah,
I identify. Like I love that stuff,
yeah.
but it was the ska stuff that just got me jumping. You know,
I did too. I mean, even just the other day, I heard this ska tune, and it's just like like just the push on the tempo was just so delightful. It's just like, how do they hold that the whole time? It's
I
just
know.
like so light and it's tight. Like I almost compare it to like that would be your if reggae had like a metal.
Yeah.
Like I think that's like the metal. Like you have to be tight. You have to be a good player like to play ska. With other reggae, I think that's where it kind of gets lost. People are like, oh, you don't have to be that good to play it, which is kind of true. You have to know the style, and like the style itself is not that hard once you learn it. But once you start picking up that tempo, and you're like past rock steady into that ska, like that is super cool. Even the early ska stuff is super dope. The Scatolites and like
Yeah.
third wave, like first wave, I do love it all too.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you mentioned that because that is like kind of some of the first like reggae hybrid stuff that I heard, and then you know go back to like Bob Marley, and then like start getting into the root stuff, which is a whole different thing. Like it's a whole different just ball game to listen to stuff that's super slow roots as compared to ska. But I love the whole.
I used to
spectrum
judge
of
it so hard. I was like, this is so slow and
Yes.
boring. And then I started looking at it like from a player's perspective, and I was like, this is pocket. Like this, how do
Yeah.
they hold it like this
Like
for so long?
amazing pocket and patience.
And it's a trance. Like
Yes.
it's just like whoa.
There's one band, Midnight, that used to come through. Their lead singer just passed. They were from St. Croix. They're kind of a newer reggae band, but they
Okay.
play some old styles and like so slow. Like I would see dudes just like standing there, just like falling asleep, and it's so transient. Like the whole time, you know, I'm like wide-eyed looking at the drummer. It's like, how is he that
know.
patient? Because sometimes like he wouldn't hit a cymbal for like 5 minutes, and then just all of a sudden it'd just be this one. We're talking about 1, 2, 3, 4. Bam! And I'm just like, oh my God. It's just like, Jesus, all that patience.
Yeah.
And like, even my students, I always tell them, like, we're doing like singles or doubles. You know, I want them to attain speed, but I really want to hear them start super slow on everything and like really feel taste each note, because it's so important, especially beginning to like know that is a part of it before you start obtaining speed. Like, oh, I could do all this cool stuff, and then like, you know, you're already like above anything you play is like over 80 BPM. Then you get a song that's like 50 BPM, and it's like, what do I do with all of this time? I can't even subdivide 16th notes this slow. It's
Right,
like, so-
right. It's like you're thinking about your to-do list at home, and
Oh,
it's like
yeah.
everything seeps in, and you're like, how are you maintaining this?
Yes.
And no tracking, no like click track or anything.
Yeah, even with the click track, it's just like you're just waiting for it. It's like click.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is wild. But having said all that, I'm not like the best at it. But the older I get, like the slower the tempo, if I can really taste it, then I'm super happy. Because at the same time, if you can focus, then you have all this time to think about what you can do in all that time in the space. You know what I mean?
Right,
And
that's
like,
true, yeah.
and if you can really find your subdivisions, you can really have like a field day, if you will, of choosing on how you're going to play certain things at a slow tempo, you know. I mean, you can definitely, you know, throw in some double time stuff, but if not, you know what I mean? Like, it just feels really nice just to like just really relax and like.
Totally. It's funny, man, because I think what you're talking about, like I've been experiencing something similar. Like I told you earlier, like I've been going back and like I grew up in Augusta, Georgia, and so like James
nice.
Brown was there. You know, I actually saw him well, I did see him get surrounded. Did you ever see his biography or like his movie about him?
Yeah.
You know that opening scene where he's like brandishing the shotgun?
Yeah, when he went to his place and got the.
I was outside across the street, catty corner from that going down.
When that was happening?
Yeah, we were at McDonald's.
No way.
Yeah. So
was it like that James Brown in a pickup truck?
We didn't know who it was. And I remembered, like, in the movie, it was like a red and white Ford. I remember, like, a brown Chevy, but that's just my memory. Like, it could be wrong. But we were catty corner at this McDonald's playing in the playground, and this is back when McDonald's had stainless steel playground equipment, right?
Yeah.
Like that little Hamburglar jail thing or whatever, and you had, like, the steel slide that would burn you.
Yes.
And so, anyway, like, all of a sudden, we see this all these cop cars just surround this, what I remember as a brown truck, but who knows? It could have been that red and white truck. And they're just surrounded by all sides, and they walk up, and they're trying to get in. Doors are locked. Dude's not letting them in, and it peels out. This truck peels out in between the like an opening in their barrier, and just takes off. And then the cops open fire, shooting out his tires, and we all just hit the deck. So I was really thankful for the steel playground set.
Wow.
And so it was like, freaked us out. I think the teachers, you know, I'm sure they were more freaked out. Like, it was traumatizing. And then the next day we found out it was James Brown, and he had driven on just the wheels of his truck for like miles, like even into like South Carolina. And so, but it was funny because then that happened. And then like my brother, he's like 7 years older than me. He had this free James Brown t-shirt.
Oh, my God.
And so then I started wearing it, and they were like, but you were there. I said, all that to say, like, so James Brown was a big part of, like, kind of part of what put Augusta on the map in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But I'll say, like, none of us, like, really listened to James Brown growing up that I remember.
Yeah.
Just little things.
Yeah.
Like, our health and safety teacher, Mr. Pickett, played bass with him long time ago. But he was a killer on the bass.
Wow.
And we would just trip out because he'd walk down the hall, and you could just... He had the swagger, and it was Pink Panther. That's how he walked. Do-doom, do-doom,
wow.
do-doom. So you knew it was Mr. Pickett, and he just had that whole style. And his daughter was in my class too, but he was awesome. He was a disciplinarian, though. You never wanted to get on his bad side because he'd just look at you, and you were like freaking out.
Because he probably James probably did that to him.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, but it was always cool because my buddy, I was in a band with, you know, one of my best friends, Ian. He played bass, and Mr. Pickett would pull Ian over and just like give him some pointers on the bass. He's like, dude, that's awesome. And then finding too, like the tempos and stuff are pretty upbeat, but it's that groove, and it's not a lot of business. I mean, it is a lot within the groove, within that pocket is what I've learned. But like I've kind of pulled back from like trying to be so flashy.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to hone in those skills of being a pocket drummer.
Yeah.
And playing slowly, and then talking about, like, I think I read in this musicology book about like adult time, where it's like simple, complex. It's like you do something that's simple. It's like that pocket, but there's complexity within it.
Yes.
Kind of like I think what you're talking about with like, whether it's like the roots reggae stuff or whatever.
Totally.
You know, it's just like, maybe it's that age we find ourselves in, or I don't know. Like, there's a certain amount of time
I think it really, even though, you know, you see like some of these young cats out here that already have it for some reason, like they just come out of the bat. It's like, how did you get that? Like you got like, but I mean, I think it probably equates to how much time you spend playing and who you're playing with. Mm-hmm. It's rare to see that in a young cat, and I think it's an age thing. For sure, even the older drummers that I like, even though I don't know, that's what I assume is going on. I was like, how do they get to that point that just that musical thought or that phrasing just that idea and to execute it and then to go on to something else like completely different, like with no, I guess ultimately that kind of flow, but not like flow in a choppy way where, hey, I'm just playing all this flashy stuff, which is cool. Don't get me wrong, as a drummer, I love watching that all day long.
Sure.
But when I can watch somebody like really lay into a song and support the song musically, like that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
Yes, I really love that.
Yeah, me too. And it's like the longer you play it, the better it gets, right?
Yep. Totally.
And you just are building something together.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can kind of get lost in it more. And I think that's a part of it too. Like you learn to like calm the mind down, and you just start accepting more things, and you're like taking stock, and you're looking around and feeling it, and just I don't know. It's a meditative state.
Yeah, very opposite of what drummers normally tend to think. This is what I think. Sometimes they're like, "Oh, I got this part," and come on, like, how am I going to do this crush and fill before that? So. Which I do it too. I go back and forth. But the older I get, just trying to streamline and think about things a little bit.
Well, and especially with some of the outfits that you play with right now, right? Like, because you got some large bands. I mean, at least with Empire Strikes Brass, right? Like, there's a lot of folks on stage sometimes with that when you got everyone, right?
Yeah, totally. And a lot. It's a lot of playing. Especially for me, and even playing with the horn band. Luckily, I do have bass and keys and guitar. Right. I have another horn band that's kind of not really active, Joint Killer right now. That was all horns. It was Sousa, 2 trumpets, 2 trombones, 2 saxes.
Okay.
All great players, but I mean, even like in marching band, when you have a conductor, it's hard for drums and brass to really get straight as far as time because one difference is brass, they have to put air into the horn and wait for that air to react. And like sometimes their idea of a one can be different than a drummer's idea of a one because they're not thinking about that breath control. Kind of like and if you've ever seen like, in an orchestra or something, the conductor, they bring their baton up, they give the big breath and then there's one, you know what I mean? Like, and in a lot of bands, we got guitar and bass players. We never have to think about that. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, bam, right in.
Yeah.
Same thing for horn players, but they got to think about that air. And so that's something that I try to think about when I play with them, because sometimes it can be kind of hard once they like get on a line and they start rushing it to pull them back. Or say I start something too fast and I hear them playing this horn line that they can barely play, maybe some 16th notes. I'm like, oh my God, I'm playing this too fast, and try to pull that whole thing back is a harder process than having like bass and guitar, somebody who can just, literally can really change their tempo with just their fingers, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's not this whole, I guess horns is a more whole body thing because it does involve the lungs and like breathing. And so it's a workout. With Empire, like I said, it's helpful to have the bass and the keys, but just the types of music we play and the arrangements, it is a lot on the drummer. Some shows, I'm fine at the end. Some shows, I am completely exhausted. Some shows by song like 3, they're like third to last tune. It's like I'm completely out of gas. I'm like, oh my God, I can almost only play eighth notes like on anything. But, you got to like endure and get through.
Yeah.
And so,
do you feel like the fatigue is like the physicality of it, or you think it's like just the listening, trying to like pay attention to everyone and kind of keep everyone together and making sure, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Oh, it's both.
Yeah.
It's both for sure. Because it could change on a different night. Because sometimes it could just be the physicality, might be like the weather conditions or whatever.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it's just like, oh man, we're not really locked up and like trying to figure out like what's going on, tune to tune. And, the styles of tunes we change often too. So
yeah, I've been listening to a lot of it lately, and just, normally when I think of y'all, I think of like, kind of a funk band, but that's not always the case.
Yeah.
Like you cover a lot of different styles in that band.
Totally.
So yeah, that's got to keep it interesting for the drummer and for everybody.
Yeah, and it keeps it fun too. Even like picking set lists, we do, we've been around. The band's been around for 12, 13 years. I've been in the band, I guess, for 8. And so our songbook is quite large because we are like a touring band, but we also do like private events. We do a lot of weddings. And so we end up learning a lot of tunes that we could use for the live show, you know,
Mm-hmm.
or we could save for a wedding. And so we just have a lot to pick from, which is a lot to remember too.
Yeah.
But yeah, it totally keeps it fun, but it's a workout. Even, you know, times that I can't do the gig, sometimes it could be hard to find a sub. I have found some subs that have crushed it.
Local? Like, do they live in Asheville?
Oh yeah,
Nice.
Ted Marks. If you know him, he's crushed it before. Sean Mason, before he passed away, used to play a lot with us.
Yeah. That was a couple years ago, right?
Yeah.
I just learned about him.
And that was right when I was kind of joining the band. He was kind of helping sub. Think of Micah Thomas,
Okay, yeah.
which
yeah.
makes sense.
I can see that.
Logan Jane.
Oh, yeah. I can see Logan showing up.
He was another one of those young cats who seems to have it mostly figured out. Don't get your head big, Logan.
I just had a conversation with him. Yeah.
He is great. I love that cat.
Yeah. He's thinking about it all, you know.
Yeah, he's serious. He's serious. And he's a delightful addition to the music scene here. Like, it's good to see some young, hungry cats. Him and even Paul Gladstone.
Yeah.
Which Paul's an alien because he plays everything. Now he's
does.
on a guitar thing and like.
I saw him last night.
Oh,
He was
yeah,
killing
he's
it.
just he didn't even want to play drums. He's like, oh, then he gets on drums. You're just like, oh, will you stop?
Right.
Get back on the guitar.
He's one of those
please.
guys. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I just saw him last night with Micah and then Connor Law on bass, and they're just great together. That's a cool little trio.
It really is.
You know.
It's so open. Like,
Yeah.
They're just like the ideas are open, which is just a beautiful thing to see, and they can pull it off.
And they pull from a lot too.
Yeah.
They got a lot of knowledge. Yeah. Yeah, there's so many good players, so many good drummers in this town.
Yeah.
I thought, like, when I started the podcast, I had just started kind of breaking into the world. I moved here originally in like 2004. I've been here for a bit, but I've like been back and forth. And so when I moved back 10 years ago or 9 years ago, I was like, not like, we were just raising a young family and all this kind of stuff. So I was not on the scene at all, not keeping up. And I'd have like friends that would kind of let me know what's going on, but like otherwise I just wasn't going out at all. Right? Like, you know.
Totally. I
And
think
so-
a lot of time, a lot of people weren't going out.
Yeah. Yeah. And so but then just this past year, I started taking lessons from like Alan and Evan and River and stuff like that.
Oh, nice.
And so then they were like introducing me and telling me who to go see and stuff. And I was like, okay, like at that point I'd become aware of like Paul and Jazz and Jazz Urias, and then, you know, the guys that I had already mentioned. I was like, man, there's a lot of good drummers here.
Yeah.
That was just the tip of the iceberg, man.
Yeah, I mean,
It was like, it's been opened up now, and I still don't know, you know, I have no clue, but just like, it's been a cool way to kind of like network and meet a lot of the drummers and stuff. And like every time I talk to someone, like you've already listed like several other ones that I need to catch up on.
you did the
find
same
out.
for me. Working Guitar Center has kind of even opened that up more for me, because what it made me realize, like, Asheville does have its circles, cliques, if you will. And
Sure.
like, there's a lot of good drummers over in my circle, in my area, but I was missing a whole another, and like, it's just it's baffling. And even every drummer that comes into Guitar Center, I assume that they're a pro. Like, you know, until they prove me otherwise, because that's just how Asheville has been. You know what I mean? Like, if I assume somebody's like, you know, just like a hobbyist, they're like, oh yeah, blah blah blah, and I'm like, whoa, what? And like, I was talking to this guy who was buying some guitar pedals, and like, he walked out of the store, and my boss was like, yeah, that's the drummer for Godspeed You Black Emperor. Like, totally lives in Asheville. Thomas, can't pronounce his last name, but he does super cool stuff. I'll share his Instagram with you. With like guitar pedals and drums, like
Sweet.
on some like almost like avant-garde jazz,
Nice.
like noise stuff, but super cool, like sampling.
That's cool.
Yeah, and like there's drummers coming in, like new cats all the time. Even on the podcast, like you've hit me to some drummers that I knew but didn't know that much about. You know, even been here for a while, so
It's probably a good way to like approach every customer that comes in.
it is.
They probably appreciate that. Yeah.
until they let me know, and then you know what I mean. And sometimes it's backfired, but yeah, most of the time it is a really cool way. And for me, like I said, like when it backfired is when I assumed somebody wasn't that good, and then they like let me know. I'm like, oh, okay, now I feel like I'm the asshole here. But like, yeah, it's cool. Even drummers like that I know about, bands that I've heard of. For instance, like Papadozio's drummer came in with his kids, and like he came up and he bought like $150 worth of stuff. I'm like, man, this guy's buying a lot of stuff. And then some friends of mine came here talking to him. He's like, yeah, I'm just happy to like not be on the road that much with Papadozio. I'm just like, oh, whoa, like this cat's like, it is crazy. And I think Asheville, as far as I know, has always been a hub of good drummers. For instance, when I was in Appalachian State, our percussion ensemble came up here to do a joint percussion ensemble thing with UNCA. I can't remember. It was a John Cage tune that required like something like 40 percussionists.
Okay.
And that's when I met like Byron Hedgepath,
yes,
who taught over there. River Gregorian was already good buddies with the percussion teacher at App, Rob Falvo.
Okay.
Who, awesome guy. One of my favorite teachers. Definitely very Tao. Like he definitely meditates all the time. He actually took some time off when he was at App to go learn tabla with Ali Raka's old teacher, and then came back and started a tabla program at App, which I got into.
Awesome. Did you?
For the first year, I was really into tabla. My buddy Billy Sewell, who also lives in town, went to App at the same time. Billy plays with Snake Oil Medicine Show.
Yeah, he's a monster.
He got really good. Billy and I took from the same teacher in 10th grade at Greensboro Music Academy, so I'll get back to that.
Okay.
So we've kind of come up together.
Right on.
But he started the tabla thing. Me and Billy started getting really into it. Billy got really into it, and he's probably still good to this day. After about a year with tabla, I was like, okay, so if I'm going to play a drum set, either I got to like play drum set, or if I'm going to play tabla, I'm going to play tabla, because like tabla is a lot. Like there's just so much of them. It's a hardcore instrument. And so like I just kind of put them down. I think I actually sold my tablas to Billy because mine sounded better and went back to drum set.
Yeah. You could do like Danny Carey and just put them electronically around the kit. You know?
Yeah, I've thought about that. So my senior, I guess, what do they call it? Recital, my last thing to graduate at App for percussion was me and my teacher doing a drum set and tabla duet, all based on tala. And so he had me like decide what noises on the drum set would translate the tabla, as far as like, you know, you have your dahina and the bayun, I think is the lowest one. And so, you know, the voom, voom, all those obviously bass drums and all that, like, you know, rolls and stuff, and like tom-toms. And like, I don't think I ever played the thing right, because it's going through the Middle Eastern cycles. So you're playing like these triples and these duples over 4, and like it's going back and forth. Super cool.
Yeah.
Didn't get it down. It definitely sparked some ideas, but something I should definitely revisit, because that stuff is super cool.
It reminds me of the kind of stuff that stretches your brain. You know?
Yes. I don't know if anybody's heard of Sarah Thoyer, I think is her name. She's an Indian drummer. She's big time. She's all over everything. I think she's endorsed by Yamaha.
Yeah. She's nuts on the drums, right? Yes.
So that is what's going on with her.
So she started out doing tabla.
Yes, in traditional Indian family, which
makes sense.
One of my best friends growing up was Indian, and like traditionally Indian, the females don't play tablas, which I've never seen really a picture of a female playing tabla.
That's true.
And so it was a male thing, but her parents, they had 2 daughters, and so they'd have the religious ceremony, so they have them play, and like she just kept with it.
She is a killer. I really can't. She's unmatched. She's like 101. I can't think of anyone that plays like her.
No, because it's her own thing, and she has that Middle Eastern thing, and she can play chops, she can play funk, like she's jazz. Like I've seen her play some rock stuff, like
and just smiling too. It always looks like she's having a great time.
It looks like she'd be a great person to hang out with. I bet she's nuts. Like just recently, she cut her eyebrows off. And she had a T-shirt. Like she's crazy.
And I think the campaign I saw was like she was catching some like hate online or something like that.
Yeah.
For you know how they do online, like just the trolls will just start like.
And I'm sure
mocking.
they get after her just because she's a female and she's killing. Like,
and she's killing. I think she's awesome.
She has the best attitude.
Yeah.
So back to Billy Sewell. So, and this kind of goes into my, I guess, education. So, in 9th grade, so I already talked about, I was already head of the other drummers in marching band. We got in this fresh band director from Kansas, I think she graduated from. into like kind of like an inner city school in High Point. Caucasian teacher fell in love with me. She had a hard time with the marching band, like nobody would listen to her, but like she always stuck by my side. She was there to my senior year, so she got me enrolled in Greensboro Music Academy, which was over in Greensboro. I took with Thomas Taylor, who now teaches at UNCG.
Okay.
Great drummer. Zildjian Endorse, you can look him up. And he also taught Billy Sewell. Thomas, on his credits, he's recorded an album with Branford.
Oh, wow.
When Branford actually came to North Carolina and taught at Carolina for just like a brief minute.
Branford Marsalis did that.
Yeah.
Right on.
Just for a second. He brought Thomas and this bass player, John Brown, to teach at Carolina with him. And I think they might have recorded some stuff that never got released. Mm-hmm. So Thomas is awesome. He also taught Breed X. I don't know if you've ever seen Xavier Ware out of Greensboro. Definitely check out this cat. Maybe my favorite drummer in the world right now.
Oh, right on.
I'm big. I like Mason Guidry a lot because he's a buddy of mine, and he's definitely one of the best in the world. I think Xavier is like coming up, and completely different styles, but they can both play anything they want, anytime they want.
Mason got ties to North Carolina because I just see like John Scales, like
I think
John was able to like pull him in.
Yeah, I think he just likes it actually because Scales did bring him in. He's from New Jersey, Philly area, like South Jersey, Philly area. They have this thing in Philly. It's like a drum off where they get into a drum ring. I don't know if you've ever seen this, and like it's 2 drum sets, and they have a track, and then like they play, and like if you lose, you go off, and then that guy stays on.
Just doing battles, yeah.
He's won that like several times, and it's like almost like embarrassed that he's done it. And I've seen the videos, and like cats will get on there, and they'll start doing this thing, and they'll just be like, just throw their sticks down. Yeah. Next guy. So yeah, I love that cat. Just to speak about that, you should definitely get him on the show. I'll try to help you if I can.
I'd love to. Please.
He's the only cat I've taken a lesson with in the past 5 years. I've taken 1 lesson, and we actually talked about.
And you picked him out, like you hadn't taken a lesson in a while. You're like Mason.
Well, I had another drum student that this was during Corona, and like I guess he like had some openings, and my other drum student like hopped on and got one, and then bought me a lesson as a gift. Nice. He knew we were homies.
Right on.
And so it was super cool, and like. We maybe talked about drum stuff for about 10 minutes. The rest, like I'm 44. I'm a dad. My son has special needs, and like Mason basically taught me life lessons, and then somehow turned it into. He's a big Star Wars fan. We talked about Star Wars for two hours, and drums about 10 minutes. The stuff he said about drums, which I'll go ahead and tell you. He was like, "Yeah, just alternate everything." Is basically what he said. My question was, how do you flow over all these odd meters? His answer was, yeah, just learn how to play singles and everything. So, like, snare drum, hi-hat, snare drum, hi-hat, snare drum, bass drum, like, all this stuff, which I totally get. He didn't answer my question. Thanks, Mason. But he gave me a little nugget. He was like, yeah, you can pick up these things. It'll help. But super cool. But what I did learn from that cat, get back to myself eventually, but Mason is awesome. The reason why Mason is Mason, at least in my opinion, he grew up in California. And his parents were musicians. So similar, you were telling me a story about, what's the drummer you just told me about out of Miami?
Oh, David Johnson. David Elliott Johnson, yeah.
Yes, similar story. His parents were musicians out in California. So sometimes Vinny would come pick him up from school. And sometimes like his
Vinny
parents
Caliuta.
Yes. Sometimes his parents would have gig at night, so he's having sleepover at Dennis Chambers' house. At the same time, Mason's in the same school of Ronald Bruner Jr. is like probably the oldest of this school. In the middle of that will be Justin Brown. Okay. That plays with Thundercat right now.
Yeah, yeah. And I love another one that's like so simple complex.
Yes. But
you gotta like you could easily, if you're not listening, if you're not tuned in, you could probably blow over it. But if you just lock in.
Yes.
That dude's kind of genius. I mean, he is a genius, I think.
Which mark on Justin Brown, he came to a funk jam. Now, I don't know when this was. It was last time. Not the last time Thundercat was in town, the time before that. And most of the cats at the Funk Jam said that was the best musician they've ever played with. Yeah. Justin Brown. I was like, oh, that's a drummer? They were like, yes.
Yeah, I mean, Thundercat chooses him.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, like out of like.
He could have anybody.
Like it's just like the list goes on. Yeah. And so that's why Mason, that's why that whole school is so good because they always had those like those forefathers of drumming, like there to teach them, and they're competing amongst themselves.
Right.
And now they go out in the world and they're ridiculous.
When did you start teaching?
I didn't start teaching until like late high school, but it was like which is kind of ironic. It was a special needs kid, and their mom was out of the house, and I only did it a couple of times. And I just got freaked out because it was like less about teaching, more about like actually like trying to control these kids.
Right.
So I didn't do it for a while. I kind of started maybe about 10 years ago, and who got me into it, which is a great story, is Rob Tollison. He used to play drums with the Secret B-Sides.
Okay.
Which you probably never knew, Rob. You probably got in town right at the end. But he was great around this area. He's actually some of my inspiration about my drum corps because, like, for instance, in Hendersonville, and some of these other mountain communities, they don't have music programs in their schools anymore. Like, they just took them out funding. Their art teacher, some of them don't have an art program. She goes around in a van, just goes to different schools. So Rob Tollison, through a church in Hendersonville, had a program that would get certain musicians, from Asheville, drummers, bass players, guitarists, and we go into like the middle schools and high schools of Hendersonville, like, maybe once a month, and like, have like each grade for like an hour in the gym, just like, here's a guitar, try it out. This is how you play it. And like, I realized like these kids, number one, love music, you know what I mean, and want to be around instruments, just there's no access. And so that was really cool. And then after that, Rob got me into the Boys and Girls Club at Hendersonville. So I became like an after-school program, like an elective, so they can go like play volleyball or basketball, or they can go learn drums, you know what I mean? And that was a trip. That taught me a lot because, number one, those kids in Hendersonville are, I'll say sassy. I'll use that. They're very smart, and they gave me a hard time. And, like, the first times I did it, I tried to, hey, let's take turns, here's how to play a beat. And then, like, before you know it, like, they're playing, like, sword fights with drumsticks. And, like, the girls are over here, like, gabbing and screaming. So it came this whole thing of, like, getting them together. But at the same time, the ones that I did get, like, just, like, the one or two that really, like, paid attention would, like, pick up something super quick. I was like, man, this is super cool. And, like, and then they cut that program off. Long story short, Rob Tollison had a heart attack playing with the Secret B-Sides, had pacemaker syndrome, didn't know. He passed away. And so, like, all this program's went away. So for a long time, I've been trying to figure out a way to get back to those kids in Hendersonville. And the drum corps thing, I already love it. So I was like, man, maybe I can kill two birds with one stone.
Dude, yeah. Do you live in Hendersonville?
No, I live in Candler.
Okay. But
just doing the Boys and Girls Club and the stuff over there just, like, made me really just feel for those kids over there. As opposed to, for instance, my son goes to Icy Imagine, which I went and did a drum set thing for the first grade class there. And, like, I didn't know they had a band. And, like, I walked into their band room, and they have, like, super nice Yamaha marimbas and like two like size xylophones and like.
Did you do mallet stuff? Well, of course you did mallet stuff.
Yes. Yeah. So I guess that'd be a good segue into education. So yeah, ninth grade did the marching band thing. I was always in like because in high school you had to do concert band when there wasn't marching band because it's a seasonal thing. And so I was also in orchestra in high school. Right. Basically, by the end of high school, I was trying to take as many music classes as I could, so I'd have to do like regular high school stuff, which I was no good at anyway. Socializing, sports, all that. So I just hung out in the music room.
Right on.
And so then when I went to App, the whole thing with App was because they were one of the top marching band schools that you had to do at least 1 year marching band. And so I was all about it. But like I said, I was good at marching band. But those guys are the best in the state. And so like that would have been a hard transition for me. I got out of it on a loophole. And this kind of boils down to the whole reason why I got into college in the first place is because at that time, the drum set player at Appalachian was Mike Rhodes, who played local drummer. Got to check Mike out. He's awesome. He was playing with the Blue Rags at the time. Okay. Who just got signed to Sub Pop. Okay. Which was, if anybody knows about Blue Rags, that was like the big thing around Asheville. And like they were one of the first bands out of this area to really get signed to somebody. And this was
And that's a cool company to get signed with too. It
2
seems
years
like
after Kurt died. They were the first new band signed after Kurt died.
Oh wow.
And so like yeah, they were like, and then they put him on a tour, CBG like record company, like the whole thing. So those guys left. Like Mike had 6 months left. He was gone. So by the time I had auditioned for App, they needed a drum set player. So they also had a jazz band and a steel drum band. And so I got out of the marching band thing because I was going to be taking all the drum set parts with the steel drum band, which traveled a lot to schools like on Fridays and the weekends and stuff. So it kind of took me out of the marching band thing, which was dope because I wanted to focus on drum set anyway. And at that time, there weren't that many drum set players at App because Rob Falvo was there and it was a big percussion school. I mean, and that was a draw for me because like in high school, like we played timpani and marimba, but not to the level that it was at App. And so when I got to App, it was a big learning curve to, really learn music theory and learn notes, 4 mallets, marimba, like that stuff was super hard. You timpani with the pitch pipe. And Dr. Falvo, to his credit, was super modern into some super modern percussion stuff, which can get kooky. Like I remember some tunes we play like with found instruments, and then like the music would be like look like some type of weird map, and like you just followed whatever your instrument was, and like it was interpretation.
Right.
And so
throw a painting on the wall, play this painting.
Totally. It was super cool, and he really took his time with me and tried to relate all that back to a drum set. And then we eventually got a drum set teacher in there, Rick Dilling, who is another cat, plays in town, jazz cat. I call him Butter because he's very similar to Alan Hall. More relaxed, almost like very like Joe Morello-like. You know what I mean? Almost like this complex simplicity again. Right. He's doing all this stuff and it feels so good, but like nothing he's doing is easy to play. And so Rick came in. That was super cool, and then some other things that I really enjoyed. They had a Middle Eastern ensemble, so
that's awesome.
I really enjoyed playing doumbek. I busted my doumbek head. I needed to get it again. I got really good at that. There was African ensemble, so
that's amazing.
And then he had the tabla ensemble too. So like
at App,
and this was all going on at the same time. Back to when I got in, there was the next year another drummer came to audition, but since I had the drummer slot, he ended up playing in the gospel choir. As far as I remember, and that was Chazare Shank. Sorry, Chazare. Shaq came out too. Another one, Jonathan Scales, his old drummer. He lives east side of Winston.
Okay, I think I've seen some video.
Yeah, he is another great guy. And then after that,
because John Scales was after you, right?
Yes. And so thanks for bringing that up. So the steel drum band at App. That's how I got out of the marching band. And the steel drum band was cool because it was called Silly Pan Steel Drum Band. I played in there for 5 years because I'm not that good at school. But
dude, it took me 5.5 years.
Oh yeah. Then I got to play in the band for 5 years. I was like, man, this is awesome. I'll stay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was super cool, just playing that Caribbean music. And I always wanted to play the steel drums, but they always wanted me to be on the drum set, which was cool. Just to learn some different grooves. Like I always had a break drum, like a physical break drum on my kit, which is very Caribbean. Just like, and I kind of missed that. I kind of missed that sound. Then the steel drum band, I started. There were a lot of great cats that started to come into App after them. That's when Scales and his whole crew. The guy who used to play bass pans with me, which bass pans are awesome. You have like 8 of them. They have 3 notes each. Just like some of the warmest sounds. Nice. He is a drummer percussionist, Josh Day. He went on to go to Musicians Institute in California, and then he played with Sarah Bareilles for that first album. Then he was with Jennifer Nettles of Sugarland for a little bit.
Yeah.
And now he is with, sorry, Josh, I can't remember. It's like Travis Tritt or somebody like that. And it's just because he kind of got into the country thing, maybe through Sarah Bareilles, but one of like just a really great percussionist. Like as I mentioned at App, like all the 4 mallets stuff. Like he had all that. he can play conga, and he's really good about playing a hybrid drum set, like with like a cajon and like a snare
It's
drum and a
amazing.
shaker. Like I've seen him on Today's Show, and like
Rivers doing
singing
that
back.
stuff.
Yes, him and Rip, like yes,
Because
that's
Tyler,
the whole class. Like that was his probably idol. Like just to do all that stuff.
it's so rare too. Like from what I'm learning, right? So Tyler Householder, I'm sure you know.
Yes.
And we were talking about that, like the differences, and he like showed me, like, because he's been a hand drummer for all his life at this point, and so, and I just never even put the two together. But you're like, obviously, your hands are different. Like that's your implement. Like that's what it becomes when you're playing hand drums all the time. And he was talking about a stick player. They have the softest hands.
Yeah.
Because you have to keep the sticks soft. Like you have to let them do their thing. And so to be able to like go back and forth between them. Got to see their hands, man. Got to see what's up. Like, how do they maintain that softness with their stick, but also, like, they put a lot of time in, no doubt, with their hand drumming too. So,
man, yeah, and River specifically, because River does, and I
everything.
do know, and the hand drumming there's a spectrum there, because you got like conga and djembe, which hurts. Let's go ahead and say that. I was talking to Micah Thomas the other day.
Yeah.
He's like, playing, cause he's pretty good at switching between.
Is he?
But he's like
a Jason Cristofaro.
He can play but he's like, as soon as I hit that wrong conga note, he's like, oh man, I know it's over for my drumstick playing for like the next 2 or 3 days. And we have all done it, got on the conga, and you hit it, you're like, oh, and then you pick up
kind of like shank it like right at the knuckle or something. Yeah,
and it swells a little bit. You pick up a drumstick and you cannot feel that thing there. And like that's why I kind of shy away. But like next time I see River, I do want to look at his hands, because that is, and like I said, he does the gambit. Because I do play a little frame drum. I do like playing frame drum, because you actually don't need. Like it's all fingers.
Yeah, right.
And
he was showing me a little bit of that during a lesson. He can rip a
frame drum. He's friends with like Glenn Velez.
Okay.
Even Randy Crafton, who lives in Greensboro, who built my frame drum. Like these are world-renowned frame drum players. Like River is up there with them. Like,
I know.
If you look up frame drum players, like it's crazy. But he can also like rip a djembe too, and then get on the drum set. So I need to look at
and marimbas, and like he's put his time in on everything.
I mean, him and Falvo, like they're like wizards.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
You even looking at them, they look just like wise, and like
they know stuff.
They don't look like drummers to me. I'm just like, oh no, you guys look like
And it is like when you go into a studio.
Yeah.
You feel like you're walking into like a wizard's like library.
Yes.
But with instead of like, spell books and stuff, it's just drums.
Yeah.
Like 20 different djembes.
And like you don't even know what some of the drums
how
are.
many different drum sets. It's just like everything, and it just has that vibe, of like genius comes through here.
Yeah,
kind
like
of a thing.
straight through the pipeline, like from whatever creator.
Mike Holstein. It was like if you ever been to his place before?
No.
If you get an opportunity, because he's like a luthier too, but like you walk in and it's like there's instruments everywhere, but it's like you got room to play, and it doesn't feel junky, and it's just like it just feels like, and he's building his own instruments and all this kind of stuff.
Another wizard. Speaking of Holstein, I first met him when I was talking about when we did the joint percussion ensembles. Mm-hmm. He was actually a percussion student at Byron Hedgepeth. He started out at Mallets and then the jazz band.
John Caldwell too. Do you know John?
Yeah.
Okay.
He was
Byron was like one of his first teachers. Yeah.
Wow. I wonder if John was back there, and I don't even remember, because John lives out in Candler, like I always see.
Yeah.
And he's always selling something. I'm like, how do you have so much gear? How do you still have so much gear?
Yeah.
But anyway, met Mike then, and then like the next year.
Because I'm thinking Mike was probably a little ahead of you.
Yeah.
So
like
you're
maybe a year or two.
Yeah.
And so we did that. Percussion things. A couple of years later, I joined this jazz duo, Culpepper and Doolin. Catherine Culpepper was a singer. Jimmy Doolin's great jazz guitar player, and we started playing at Tresses from Boone. And so Tresses was the first. I had some reggae bands, like we did some old Asheville music venues like Emerald Lounge, Be Here Now. But Tresses was like what I really felt like Asheville was like, okay, you can come and play here. It felt really opening. So we come and do that, and then who starts coming playing bass is Mike Holstein, and like like the trio that Culpepper Doolin were awesome, and then like Mike came in. I'm like, whoa! I mean, like this is the time where I'm like heavily into Tedeschi Martin and Wood, like digging in some jazz stuff. I'm big into like Charlie Hayden and like Scott LaFaro, you know, and like this guy comes in sounding like all of them, like right off the bat. And I'm like, yo, who is this cat? And then like, you know, 2 years later, he's gone off in New York and he's playing with everybody. Then he comes back and he's like, he starts making guitars and all these hybrid things. So I just saw him a couple of weeks ago in the music store.
Oh, really?
We were talking about there's a guy to get up and hang out.
That would be an act worth catching.
Yeah, if he would let me play a gig with him, I would love it. But yeah, because he's another monster, another like I don't
he's
think
one of
many
those
people
guys.
know about him.
Like I was laying down this new I was by the time I saw him, I was like super into Micaiah McCraven. And so I was like, dude, what's going on here? And 2 notes in, and he's just like, he's sitting down already. He's got his drum set, and he's got his Lynn instrument like this. And so like I started playing it, and 2 notes in, he's playing right along with it. Like it was just natural. Like he just locked in, and he knew what was up, and he had the feel. He had the chord changes and everything. It was just like,
I mean, and it's been like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
I love it, and I don't get it, and it's awesome to see. I mean, it's like, yeah, you probably thought you were challenging him. You're like, he's not gonna hop.
I do. I wasn't expecting anything. I was just asking him how to like. I was wanting that. Like I was wanting him to know it and tell me what's up.
Yeah.
But it was like I was not expect. I was expecting. I had showed it to other teachers before.
Yeah.
And they were like, and they would like pick up on the drum beats relatively quickly, but also recognizing like Micaiah puts like he layers his stuff. You know what I mean? And so they would kind of give me a hint about like getting close to what's going on. Alan Hall is who I'm talking about right now. But then just laying it down in front of Mike.
That's
just
how Mike
in
is. Like he was just like, ooh, okay. He's like, yeah. It's so, man.
Killer.
Yeah.
So you got into teaching though.
Yes, through about 10 years ago, through the whole Hendersonville thing. And then after that went away, I started doing it kind of privately. Well, no, I'll take that back. After that went away, I got a job at the Music Academy of Western North Carolina, which is in Hendersonville, which is a place where it's like studio rental. And basically, I got that gig because Sipe was teaching there for a while. He got some gig. He had to go on the road, and guy was like, yo, I need a teacher right away. Mm-hmm. Tried that for a minute. It was cool because I started out like 11 students at the beginning of the year till like 2 at the end of the year. Uh-huh. And it was like room rental. So like I started out great. And then by the end, I'm like owing money, you know what I mean? And like, you know, they found the students, a lot of like, you know, high school students, middle school students, like in that transition, you know, either like going into high school, going into college, and like basically just like either switching instruments or just dropping drums altogether. Yeah. And so I was like, I can't do this room rental. So I started doing it on my own. And I got about 4 or 5 students that I would do a week. But my range is normally like middle school to like mid high school. 2 years ago, I had a guy who's a senior right now. My son's orthotist son. Uh-huh. And this kid's actually awesome. He right now he plays saxophone in the Asheville marching band. Okay. He has like legit jazz guitar gigs around town. Jazz guitar. He also plays jazz piano, and like if he rips on drums. Last thing we were working on was you're talking about Highest Coyote. What song is it? Molasses. Oh yeah, dude. Like he's just working on that one. And like his keyboard player is like, yeah, my keyboard player knows this. He wants to learn. I'm like, what? As if y'all gonna have to practice this together. But I mean, we dissected it. Like I'm learning the tune, like trying to figure out what's going on, and like he's catching it as quick as like I'm learning it. So like, well, and Perrin Moss is like one of those too, where he'll compose on the computer some and on different things, and then he's got a hand drumming thing going on too. So like, back to that like simple complexity. He'll do something, you'll totally know what's going on. Like through the verse, and then like in the chorus, he just like, what did you do? That's so cool, but like, how did you get there? No, he's just tuned in. Yeah, and it's like it's not super choppy, but the stuff is cool and like just well thought out, and like his elasticity with sound is some of the best that I've ever seen. That's a good way to put it. And I think it's like all that he puts into it. Like he can like lay it down, and he can put all these things together and figure out what really works. He just dropped a electric album or an EP maybe. Ooh. Yeah. As far as like the styles of music that we're into, they are influencing a whole new generation on some really inventive neo soul stuff, which I think is just really cool. Speaking of lessons in Highest Coyote, one thing when I was teaching him, telling him about, we, started out playing drums, in like the 90s and stuff, with the like grunge stuff. It was like, we were just playing rock drums. And then, I was even talking about like the R&B stuff was like produced. And now, you know what I mean? Like after all that's gone on, it seems like acoustic players now have to adjust to sound not only like a human, but sound like a machine.
Yeah.
Which is the name of the game without like completely going to electronics. That's where we get like the clap stacks and stuff. And like, the whole Dilla styles of like, really, which is always an acoustic thing we can do. It's just like these producers, I think, really brought it to light how we can really exaggerate these things. And it's super cool. And even though I'm older, I feel like because I'm older, I feel like I'm getting out of touch with like this new wave of like, this meeting of like the acoustic sound of the kit with the electronic side of the kit, with it all being sticks, without even any pads or anything, trying to like emulate that. Like,
yeah.
Super hard. Like we were talking about, Paul Gladstone, for instance, is a really good example of someone who has a drummer's vision, but can actually add like that production aspect and like multi-instrumentalist musicality to the drum set, and it just makes him his own, like, it just makes the stuff he does super inventive. And like, to me, just being like, what I feel like is like just like an all drummer, I'm just like, man, that's it. Like, that's super cool. That's where it's at.
Yeah.
Like,
and in a lot of ways like that, and Jazz is also doing that too. Like he's been working on his own stuff and like producing in that way.
Totally.
And it's become so much more accessible, where like one of my questions going in was like, yeah, how does the drummer find a voice, kind of a thing? And it's like, this is how, like, they're producing more.
Yeah.
They're, and like for other folks too, like they're just kind of diving into the whole thing.
Yeah.
Everything, which is awesome.
It really is. That's something I need to get into. I've always thought about it for a while, but it's a hard step. It's a lot.
It is.
Big up Jazz too. I hadn't talked about Jazz at all, but yeah, he number one, he's good looking and he's super good at drums. So I like to bust his balls.
Yeah.
Every time I see him, and there was like the first time I saw him, he's like, "Man, can I get a lesson?" He's like, "No, you don't need a lesson." I'm like, "Come on, dude! Like, come on."
Yeah, I've got a friend. And I told him I was interviewing Jazz. He's like, I could not interview that dude. He's too good looking.
Yeah.
It's
just
like
too much. I just like want to give up. I'm just like, man.
But yeah, he's so humble though.
Like just the nicest cat, and like just really present too. And he's like, another guy that's like not only just musically talented, he's got his photography thing. Like it's just too much.
I know. It's just all that talent.
Much.
I love Jazz's playing.
Yeah.
Like it's different.
Yeah.
And it's like simple, complex.
Yes.
He'll just lay down a little drag or something that I'm just, what the fuck did you just do?
It's so perfect.
I know. And he's just like right back in it.
Yeah,
It was just like, what just happened?
Yeah.
So subtle.
Mm-hmm. It's the type of thing when he does it, you know that there's a whole world that he has of that. But he's so chill with it. He doesn't have to give you everything. He's just gonna give you that little bit. Just like work on it. Just like, oh.
You know what though? Like when Elon JD was in town for a bit, and they just did a little duo situation. But then he and Elon was awesome because Elon knows how to like leave space for the drummer.
Yes.
But also command and take up a lot of room.
Yeah.
In a very like tasteful way. And so to see them kind of trading off, like I want to see more of that.
I mean, the way you're describing it to me, this sounds like looking at like Victor Wooten and like Dennis Chambers
100%.
on YouTube. Like it's that same thing. It's like,
different taste, but like they're
just
not
that conversation though, like on like that top notch level. Like
100%.
that is I wish I want to see that too.
Yeah.
Elon is that is another monster. Very, very much a drummer's bass player. He plays so rhythm, like, and I think that's why. Scales. Speaking of Scales, I did see him. I was actually on Scales' first album. Just
really?
One tune. When he was at App, he recorded the studio there, and he was still putting the band together. So I've seen all the combinations Chazzaray played with him. Like, he's always had the best drummers that are available. But once he got Mason and Elon, like, I felt like they really brought his music to a level, because his music is so complex. If the right people aren't playing it, then it can get lost in just complexity. And when he got those guys, like the complex became fun for some reason, like, which I always dug, you know what I mean? But for the audience, you could see the band like expand. I felt like that complexity became fun because they could see those guys really dig into it.
Yeah.
And it's super cool to see.
It is so cool. Yeah, absolutely. Well, you've mentioned it a couple of times, and I don't want to like go without asking this question, but like what has it been like for you? Because you got a young family, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how has that been for like a gigging, touring, recording drummer with a young family?
It's been a challenge.
Yeah.
It kind of. So, just briefly with my family history, my wife and I, tried to get pregnant. The first time was in 2012. We had our first pregnancy. She got preeclampsia.
That's scary.
Which used to be called toxemia, I think. And basically, in short, what it is after the baby's in the mom for a while, normally about 6 months in, the body sends a response to the moms that the baby's poisonous, has to come out. So this is a very common thing. Yeah. So we lost our first son. He lived for an hour because he wasn't in the womb long enough to be viable for life. And so at that point, I was playing. I was working just like a regular job. When we lost our first child, when he was coming, I kind of was already pulling away from music. I played with Josh Phillips Folk Festival for a while. 2 years before that, we were doing really good. The band kind of dissolved, so like that's why we decided to get pregnant. I wasn't doing much, and so then I got a desk job. Worked there for about 3 years and didn't really play much drums. I was almost pulled out. Like I had like a reggae band that I would play with. We rehearse once a week and maybe have like a gig once every 3 months. So like for me, who plays a lot, like that was basically I wasn't doing anything, and I was fine. It was my desk job. Kept getting in trouble watching YouTube. So. After that, we got pregnant again. This was 2015. We have the son we have now, Solomon. Same thing. She had preeclampsia. But the medicine had changed so much, this son did live. And so he's awesome. He was in the NICU for 105 days.
Wow.
And this is surprisingly the same time that I joined Empire Strikes Brass.
Oh, wow.
Because I quit the day job. They weren't really playing that much.
Okay.
I was going to be a stay-at-home dad. And so, like, for the weekends, my wife was working. She'd come home. She'd be the baby. And, like, Empire, we were just kind of, like, they were not playing much. We were kind of just forming. And so at that time, basically, I didn't know what I was getting into. I was just happy to have, like, another gig, if you will.
Right.
Especially after the day job, being a stay-at-home dad. And that was awesome. That was the funnest job I've ever had, like this first 3 years with my son at home. And then the band started to pick up, and that's when it got kind of crazy because, not only the time being away and missing my son grow up, which, like, I don't want to exaggerate. We don't play that much. Like, there's other bands that definitely, like, hit the road for, like, months. Like, we're kind of weekend warriors. Like, most will go out, it's, like, 2 weeks. But, being at home with a child for, like, 3 years, like, 2 weeks is a long time.
Yeah.
And so it's taken quite a bit. During that time, my wife, because of the pregnancy, it's just her health conditions, she stopped working, and I became the breadwinner. And, like, being a breadwinner as a drummer is super hard. It's been a challenge, but the way I look at it is, like, that's just my story. And my son, number one, he loves drums. He has epilepsy. Drums is really good for epilepsy. And so for, like, sometime, just having my son, I decided with myself, I'm going to pursue this drum thing, not only for me, so he could have something to look up to, too, from his dad. Like, through this interview, like, most my life, all I've done is drums. Like, I don't have that many other skills. And so, like, I do want to have that for him, which is also a production thing. Like, I want to sometime lay down my own album, my own stuff, just for that history, you know what I mean? And just for the learning of it is cool stuff. And so the whole touring thing and family, and, like, I look to my heroes. Like, I'm not the first, you know what I mean? I'm not going to be the last that's a dad playing drums. But these times it's definitely hard. But I wouldn't take it away I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't do anything differently.
Yeah.
And, like, even right now, I feel like the rate that Empire is going is pretty good. Like, this month we had 16 gigs, which is the most we've had probably all year. It's been kind of a slow year. But for instance, this week we've had 4 gigs. And I've been home maybe 2 nights, which is not ideal, but at least I get 2 nights. You know what I mean? I could be gone, for the whole month, and come back. So right now I'm happy. There's a yin and yang. The balance is the hardest thing, and I just try to maintain that balance for sure.
Yeah.
But and as far as a drummer and an artist, all of these things add to my story and just like my inspiration to play, which I tell my students, like, you can practice all day, can learn everything, get all your rudiments right, all your phrasing, all this stuff, but like, it's not going to mean anything if you don't have any life story and any like heart to put behind it. Because like, this is music. This is about feeling, and so like, that's why my story might not be like the best thing, but that's just who I am, and I feel like I'm happy that it's just gave me character and gave me more to add to my music.
When you have a parent or you grow up looking up to your dad who devotes their time to you, to family, and then also devotes their time to music and creation.
Yeah.
Right? Like putting their mark out there and not just like, and sometimes it's necessary to like, I don't mean to like just coat sugar over everything.
Yeah.
But like to be able to have that as a lesson.
Yes.
Like dad's making it work.
Yes.
And he's creating. Mm-hmm. And so like, he loves what he does, and he's like, there might be a struggle through that, but also like, what else are you going to do with your life?
Yes.
If you're not creating something.
And I'm glad you said that. Even I saw my dad last night, and the older I get, know your relationship with your parents, but like you start to pick up on things that you're going through as a parent, like if they were going through, and you're like, oh, he was going through that at that time, and like as a kid, like you don't notice when your parents are struggling. You just look at what they're doing, and you think that's cool or not cool. You know what I mean? Like my dad, like he was a shipping supervisor, but I always saw him like just work hard, and so like that was instilled in me, and so I think that's just what's going across my son. And like now we have conversations like, yeah, I didn't have a job at this time, and it was so hard. I don't remember any of that. Wow, you know what I mean? I just remember just being a kid, and everything was awesome. And it's like, and so that's just the same thing, I want for my kid, and he does love drums, and he has CP, so he doesn't walk. He doesn't have facility over his left hand, but any instrument I can get into his hands. Like I think he might make an awesome trumpet player, or trombone, which he loves those instruments, and so yeah. It's
and
cool.
Again, like bringing it back to like drum machine, like if he loves drums and he like has the mind for it, right? Like it's like that's an amazing thing.
I'm glad you brought that. One of my buddies who is epileptic had this idea because he has a cousin who is autistic, and so he had like one of those. I think it's like a Kai, like it just has like maybe 5 buttons, like basically like a MIDI trigger thing. He would make like part of a drum beat, like not just like a bass or a snare, but like half of a beat, so like boom, boom, pop, and then the other button would be like pop, boom, boom, pop. So like whatever button they push, it was always going to be on time, always sound good. And like he was like thinking it was his idea, but he was trying to get me on board with it, trying to figure out a way to make these instruments for kids with like autism and like CP to like at least start to like play things, these musical phrases if they can only use one finger. And so when you said that drum machine thing, like that's totally like he could be a brilliant producer one day. And like
so my daughter's got some differences too, but like epilepsy, dyslexia, ADHD, kind of a situation. We went to OT for a little bit, and they started putting her on this like click track, and it was basically just trying to learn to keep time. There are studies behind it, that can kind of help with focus and things like that. And so I was like, okay, I think we just need to get her bass lessons, because that's what she was drawn to anyway. Wow. So like we've kind of switched over, and so she's been taking bass right now.
Nice.
But yeah, because it's like, okay, well, and I don't think she was so far. I don't think there was a lot of benefit for her because she wasn't so far on that spectrum that it was going to be super helpful. But it was like a good introduction, and just also a cool reminder too, like how important it is, like music.
It's therapy
and
like
rhythm, and like it's good for neurology and everything else.
Totally.
And so, and you talked about the epilepsy too.
Yeah.
Stuff that's inspiring me up because it's fascinating.
had the idea of percussion programs for special needs kids. I almost applied for a job at Pace Academy, which is all special needs school. They needed a music teacher. And then like based off my own son, I was like, man, like if this is somebody else's child, I don't know if I can handle all these conditions just based on my own like insecurity beyond music, you know what I mean? But I've seen on Instagram there are some really good camps and programs for kids like that using music and percussion. I was like, man, this might be like, you know, what life is drawing me towards. There's all these things like kind of add up, and so which is cool because it does heal. Even when I first started playing drums, like my main goal, if you say, was to express my emotions through playing drums.
Yeah.
Which, as a kid, I didn't realize what my goal was like completely impossible. Like you're never. It's like basically saying like I want to be perfect on the drums. Like
right.
Which I can express my emotions. I've gotten to that point where if I'm feeling sad, I can get that out. Doesn't take the sadness away, but at least I can express it through my instrument.
Right.
And like, and that's a great feeling. The thing I didn't concentrate on is like, you know, even though you have these emotions, once you're off the kid, it's not like it's just going to take them away.
Right.
But to have a place to voice them is gold. That's really cool with any instrument. I think that should be a goal, like just to be able to, because, you know, life is hard. And music is awesome.
I love that. Cool, man. Well, thanks so much for sharing, dude.
Yeah, this was way easier than I thought.
Nice.
I had a great time.